Hello and welcome to AI Vodcast, the channel where we use the power of AI to simplify the complex, spark meaningful conversations, and connect ancient wisdom with modern life. Here, we dive deep into fascinating topics and break them down into relatable, bite-sized ideas that make sense in your day-to-day life. Whether it's age-old philosophy, cutting-edge technology, or personal growth strategies, AI is here to guide the way with clarity, depth, and a touch of inspiration. In today's episode, we're continuing our journey through the Bhagavad Gita and diving into Chapter 2, a chapter that's all about emotional stability and navigating life's toughest moments. Arjuna's despair before the battle of Kurukshetra mirrors the doubts and fears we all face. But Krishna's teachings on the soul's immortality, the balance between action and consequence, and achieving a stable mind offer timeless lessons for finding clarity and confidence, even in chaos. And that's not all. Later in this episode, we'll explore how these teachings can help you handle stress, make purposeful decisions, and build a mindset that thrives no matter what challenges come your way. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this. Before we dive in, a quick note. This podcast is entirely AI generated. The host, the guests, and even the insights are powered by AI. This project is all about celebrating the creativity and knowledge AI can bring to our lives. It's not meant to hurt anyone's beliefs or feelings, so let's enjoy this journey with an open mind and a curious heart. Thank you for being here and supporting this exciting experiment. If you enjoy what we're doing, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your feedback in the comments below. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. What topic should we break down next? Let us know.
All right. Let's dive into some serious ancient wisdom. We got a whole stack of sources here on the Bhagavad Gita Chapter 2 specifically.
Oh, yeah?
Looks like someone's been doing their homework, huh? We've got excerpts, different interpretations, commentaries.
Lots to unpack.
For sure. So, Chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, it is a dialogue, right, between Arjuna the warrior and Krishna the god, right on the edge of this epic battle.
Yeah, you can really feel the tension. Imagine it, Arjuna looking across the battlefield and seeing his own family on the other side. I mean, talk about inner conflict, grief, doubt, duty. It's all there.
It's heavy stuff. And that's where Krishna steps in, with some pretty profound truths about the soul, about duty, about how to find peace in the middle of all that chaos.
Exactly. I mean, right from the start, Krishna is tackling Arjuna's despair head on with this radical idea. The soul doesn't die with the body.
Well, hold on. So it's like we're not just our physical selves.
Right. Krishna's saying the soul is eternal. It's untouchable. Weapons can't hurt it. Fire can't burn it. Water can't drown it. It's a completely different way of thinking about what it means to be alive.
I mean, how often do we get caught up in the limitations of our bodies?
Yeah.
This is blowing my mind already.
Totally. And there's this great quote from one of the commentaries that really captures this. The soul sheds worn-out bodies and enters new ones, just as a person discards old clothes and puts on new ones.
Wow. So it's like we're just wearing these bodies like outfits. That's intense. Makes you think about death and grief totally differently.
Absolutely. If our essence, our true self, continues beyond this physical form, then maybe success and failure, all the things we get so attached to in this life, they take on a whole new meaning.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
For sure.
But wait a minute. So we've got this eternal soul that can't be harmed, but then Krishna tells Arjuna to get up and fight.
Right. It's like he's saying, yeah, your soul might be eternal, but you still have responsibilities down here.
So there's this tension between the eternal and the temporal, right?
Absolutely. And at first, Krishna appeals to Arjuna's sense of honor, his reputation. He's basically saying, if you abandon your duty, you'll be disgraced. It's fascinating how those social pressures, that fear of judgment, it's all still so relevant today.
It's like this ancient text is speaking directly to our modern anxieties.
Totally.
It makes you wonder, what are our duties, our responsibilities today? How do they shape our choices? And do they ever clash with what we believe in?
Deep stuff. And then there's this whole concept of buddhi yoga, the yoga of intellect. It's where Krishna talks about acting without being attached to the result.
Oh yeah, buddhi yoga. Honestly, it's one of those things that's really hard to wrap your head around.
Right. It's a total mind bender.
Right.
But try thinking of it this way. Imagine you're pouring your heart and soul into a project at work. But instead of obsessing over whether you'll get a promotion or recognition, you just focus on doing the best job you can, just for the sake of it.
So it's like the work itself becomes the reward,
You got it. It's about intention, responsibility, but letting go of the need to control everything. That's the essence of Buddha yoga.
That's easier said than done, though, right?
Yes.
Especially in our world where it feels like everything's about achieving success, hitting those goals.
You're right. It takes practice. But even small steps towards that kind of detachment, they can make a huge difference in how we feel, how we experience the world.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this connects. Shifting the focus from the outcome to the journey itself.
Yes.
It's almost like surrendering control, which can be scary, but also kind of freeing.
Exactly. And that feeling of freedom, it's a big part of what the Gita is pointing towards. Finding that inner peace that doesn't depend on what's happening around you.
That makes sense. Okay, so far we've got this eternal soul, the idea of duty, and this whole concept of acting without attachment. But then Krishna describes these people, these incredibly peaceful beings, almost superhuman, you know?
Yeah, the yogis, right?
Yeah. He says, a person who is steadfast in divine consciousness discards all selfish desires, remains undisturbed amidst misery, and is free from attachment, fear, and anger. I mean, that's a pretty high bar.
It's like the ultimate level up. But the interesting thing is, it's not about suppressing those emotions altogether. It's about creating space, learning to observe them without getting swept away.
So it's like you can feel anger, fear, all of that, but you don't let it control you.
Exactly. You're not denying those feelings. You're just choosing how you respond to them.
That's powerful.
Right? That kind of inner stillness, it's like a superpower.
Especially in the middle of all the craziness of life. It's like the whole point of the Gita's teachings is to help us find that peace, even when everything's going haywire.
I think you're right. And Krishna uses this beautiful metaphor to illustrate this. He compares desires to rivers flowing into the ocean. All those churning desires, those rushing rivers, they all end up in the vast, still ocean. And the ocean, it just remains undisturbed.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
So it's not about getting rid of desire completely, but more about not letting it control us.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that inner ocean of peace.
Make you think about how much energy we waste on chasing those desires, those rushing rivers, instead of finding that stillness within.
For sure. And the Gita suggests that even a little effort towards cultivating that peace, it can protect us from a lot of suffering.
Okay, this is all incredibly fascinating, but I'm curious how we actually put this into practice. This was written thousands of years ago. How do we bridge that gap to our lives today?
That's the key question, right? How do we take these ancient teachings and make them relevant in the 21st century? And that's something we'll definitely delve into as we keep exploring the Gita. But first, there's this other really important concept from Chapter 2 that I think we need to unpack. Achieving a state beyond sorrow.
Okay, now that has my attention. A state beyond sorrow. Let's dive into that in part 2 of our deep dives.
Oh.
So we left off talking about this idea from the Gita of reaching a state beyond sorrow. A state beyond sorrow. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty far out there, especially with all the chaos and curveballs life throws our way.
Yeah, it's definitely a big idea, a challenge for sure. But the Gita actually offers some really practical insights into how to get there.
Okay, I'll listen.
One of the key things Krishna emphasizes is that both sorrow and happiness, they're kind of like passing seasons. They come and go. He's encouraging Arjuna, and really all of us, to move beyond that constant back and forth, to find a place inside that isn't shaken by those ups and downs.
So it's not about pretending we don't feel those things, the pain, the joy.
Right, exactly. It's more about understanding that they're not permanent.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually do that? Not get so caught up in the emotional roller coaster. I mean, does the Gita give us any practical tips?
It does. And one of the most powerful teachings is this idea of karma yoga.
Karma yoga. I've heard that term before. It's that whole what goes around comes around thing, right?
Well, it's related, but it's more about performing actions without being attached to the results. Like, imagine you're helping a friend move. Right? You're not doing it because you expect them to pay you back or even really thank you. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do, That's the essence of karma yoga, acting from a place of duty and service.
So it's about doing good for its own sake, not because you're looking for a pat on the back.
Exactly. And it's a really profound way to break free from that whole cycle of karma where our actions kind of create these ripples that eventually come back to us. When we act selflessly, we're not creating those new karmic bonds.
Interesting. So it's like by letting go of the need for a reward, we actually create more peace for ourselves in the long run.
You got it. It's like creating a buffer zone between ourselves and all those inevitable ups and downs.
That makes a lot of sense. Less attachment, less drama. So it's not about becoming these emotionless robots, right?
Yeah.
We're still allowed to, feel things.
Of course. It's about choosing how we respond to those feelings, creating that space between what happens and our reaction to it.
Yeah, that space between stimulus and response, that's where it's at. But honestly, that's the part I struggle with the most, especially when things get heated. Any advice on how to actually cultivate that space?
That's where practices like meditation and mindfulness come in really handy.
Ah, okay. So it's like training your mind to be more aware, more present.
Right. Even just a few minutes a day can make a huge difference. It's like training a muscle. The more you practice, the easier it gets to observe those thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them.
So it's like building mental and emotional resilience. That makes sense. But one thing that strikes me, even looking at all the materials you brought, is that interpreting the Gita itself can be a bit of a challenge. Like, there are some different perspectives, especially around the whole God thing.
Yeah, that's a really important point. The Bhagavad Gita has been interpreted and reinterpreted throughout history through different lenses and traditions. It's fascinating, really.
So there's not just one right answer, one right way to understand it.
Exactly. Some commentaries focus on the idea of a single supreme God, while others emphasize devotion to a specific deity. And then there are those who see the various gods as representing different aspects of the divine, different qualities.
So it's like, this ancient text is still speaking to us today, but it's inviting us to find our own meaning, our own path.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's not a set of rigid rules, It's a living wisdom tradition that continues to inspire and challenge people from all walks of life.
Okay, so we've got this framework for understanding the soul, duty, the path to inner peace. But I have to ask, how does all of this actually play out in real life?
Yeah.
How do we bridge that gap between these ancient teachings and the complexities of the modern world?
That's where things get really interesting. The Gita doesn't just give us these big philosophical concepts, it actually offers some very practical guidance for how to live a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Okay, now I'm all ears. Let's dive into those practical applications in the final part of our deep dive. So we've been through a lot with the Bhagavad Gita. Eternal souls, duty, finding peace in the chaos. But how do we actually bring all of this ancient wisdom into our modern lives?
Right. It can feel a bit like, okay, great ideas, but what do I do with them?
Exactly.
But the thing is, the Gita is surprisingly practical. It's not just about lofty concepts, One of the big takeaways for me is this idea that true fulfillment doesn't come from chasing external rewards.
It's not about the trophies.
Nope. It's about aligning our actions with a higher purpose.
So like finding a sense of meaning in what we do, not just success in the traditional sense.
Absolutely. And that's where this concept of dharma comes in.
Dharma, okay. Often translated as duty, right?
Yeah, but it's so much more than just duty. It's like understanding our unique role in the universe, figuring out how to live in a way that expresses our truest selves.
So it's about finding our purpose. But not in some grand cosmic sense, more like in the everyday choices we make.
Right. It's about asking those big questions, like what are my gifts? What am I good at? How can I use those things to help others, to make a positive impact on the world?
Yeah, I can relate to that. Thinking about the times when I feel most fulfilled, it's usually when I'm doing something that feels meaningful, something that's in line with my values.
And that's the beauty of the Gita's teachings. They resonate with those core human experiences. It's not about following a set of rules, but about living in a way that feels authentic.
Okay, I like that. So we've got Dharma, aligning our actions with a higher purpose. But we also talked about detaching from outcomes, that whole Buddha yoga thing. How do those two ideas work together?
That's a great question. It's like finding that balance between action and non-attachment. We're called to act, to engage with the world, fulfill our Dharma, but without clinging to the results.
So it's like giving it your all, but then letting go of the need to control the outcome?
Yes.
Okay, so I think I'm starting to get this. Being fully present in the moment, but also being okay with whatever happens.
Exactly. That's where true freedom lies. When we release our attachment to those specific outcomes, we open ourselves up to all sorts of possibilities.
More possibilities, less stress.
More adaptable, more resilient, and ultimately more joyful.
This has been amazing. We've explored so much. From the soul to Dharma to Karma Yoga, I feel like I've learned a ton. What's one final takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the Gita is not just a book to be read. It's a way of life to be lived. It's an invitation to look within, to connect with our true selves, and to live a life that truly matters.
Beautifully said. And remember, folks, even a small step in that direction can make a world of difference. Maybe it's taking a few minutes each day for mindfulness, or choosing kindness in a tough situation. Every effort counts. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Bhagavad Gita Chapter 2.